There is no more doubt about it. The Minnesota Vikings are Super Bowl contenders. Just let that soak in, baby. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate y'all so very much. Today's episode is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Go to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. Let's start today with an article from The Athletic by Alec Lewis. Been on the show a couple times. I love what Alec does, and he put together a very persuasive statistical case comparing the Vikings to the last 10 Super Bowl winners. I don't usually like this kind of heuristic, but I do find the point that he made pretty persuasive. The reason is, the 2022 Eagles were just as much of contenders as the 2022 Chiefs were, right? The 2018 Rams are also worthy comparison points. But if you go back 10 years, all the, those 10 elite teams that won, what did they look like in these statistical categories? And you'll find the Vikings look a lot like them. We'll go over some of that and some very interesting information. Plus, the over-under, we'll look at the betting lines and see what they tell us about how the public feels about the upcoming Vikings-Seahawks game. And then, of course, your bold predictions. You guys did great on them this week. I'm very excited about that. But let's eat our vegetables first. So, Alec Lewis, I'll link this article in the show notes in the description. But the Vikings currently, per the Athletics projection model, have a 31% chance to win the NFC North. And they give it an 11% chance to actually earn a first-round bye. I'm going to guess a lot of that difference is scenarios where both the Vikings and Lions lose one or two down the stretch, because the Lions now, their defense is like super suspect, so I'm sure the models are dinging them for that, and then the Eagles get the bye, but the Vikings win the NFC North. But either way, right? We're the Vikings are looking good, feeling good. Took a game back now from Detroit, and are tied there. They can remain tied headed into Week 18, feeling great. If you're going into Week 18 down a game, you're probably not going to get tiebreakers. I actually think that's now impossible. Unless, the Lions can, I guess, lose their Bears game, and then it gets spicy, but pretty tough ask. So here's some of the statistical cases that he did. Now, he picked a few categories that are broad, but he didn't just do, touchdowns and total yards, right? Which I appreciate quite a bit. But point differential. Point differential is not my favorite stat. I think you can go, you can win 3 games by a touchdown and then lose a game by 3 touchdowns, and point differential will say that's a medium team. And I don't think that that's correct. That's a 3-1 team that had a bad day. But if you want to go by that, the Vikings point differential right now is 117. Among the last 10 Super Bowl champions, dating all the way back to the 2014 Patriots, the Vikings' current point differential would rank 4th. It would rank above all of the Chiefs teams that won the Super Bowl under Patrick Mahomes. It would rank above the 2021 Rams, the Tom Brady Bucks, the Tom Brady Patriots of 2018, and of course those Manning Broncos. Only under the 2016 Patriots, the 2014 Patriots, and then the Eagles team that beat the Vikings in the NFC Championship. Those are the only teams with better point difference. So you're in that category. You're somewhere between the 2019 Chiefs and the 2016 Patriots in terms of point differential. All of these stats are going to be like that, but I want to move on to ones that I find more persuasive, like explosive plays. So the whole thesis of the Vikings is to chase explosive plays, especially on offense, but in kind of the way that defense does that too, right? They're hunting chaos and turnovers and sacks and kind of saying, you can get all the 6-yard plays you want, but eventually we're going to make it 2nd and 16 and that won't be enough. But offensively, trying to generate explosive plays is sort of their identity. And I think that this makes for some of the statistical cases that, you'll see to discredit the Vikings. I mean, the big one right now is like that they haven't played anybody. I think that's completely asinine. They were supposed to have the third hardest schedule coming into the league. The idea that only 2 of their wins have been over, teams that are over 500, but I think 3 of the games that they've won, those teams would be over 500 if they had beaten the Vikings. So it's like, well, the Vikings handed a loss to all of these teams. Of course, their win-loss record has, 12 losses on it. Those are the Vikings. They lost to them. But also, I mean, the Texans are no slouch of a team. The Falcons are no slouch of a team. These teams are in free fall sometimes. Maybe they're inconsistent, but like the 49ers, that's a tough team, right? Cardinals, that's a tough team. Those are all perfectly respectable opponents. And it's not, there's no Alcorn State in the NFL. But another one that you hear is about like the Vikings being inconsistent sometimes, right? Like, you see these like lulls. Oh, they have these stretches and they have these 3 and outs and they have, these quarters where they do really bad and you can kind of isolate those and start to. But when you chase explosive plays, you're going to go cold sometimes. You think about it like a basketball team that shoots like 43s a game. Sometimes you're going to go cold from there and you're going to not score for a while and the other team's going to get a huge run. But over time, you're going to have, over the long term, all those, the stock market evens out, right? The line go up. So in explosive plays, and I believe 20 or more yards passing plays, that's what we're talking about here, just passing. We'll get to rushing in a sec. But 18.7 would be the highest among all teams that won the Super Bowl. More explosive than any Super Bowl team in the last 10 years. Like maybe not more explosive than the 2018 Rams were, but like, God, even if you did put in like Final Four teams or something, they got to be pretty high. 18.7 is ridiculous. That's insane. 1 out of 6 times, more than 1 out of 6 times, Sam Darnold drops back, that thing's going explosive. What? That's crazy. But let's talk about running the football, right? They're an average run team. They are middle of the pack yards per carry, 4.1. Middle of the pack EPA, they're 15th in EPA per play on the run. It's okay. But the last 10 Super Bowl champions have been all over the place. The 2016 Patriots had lower yards per carry. They were slightly higher in EPA per play. The 2019 Chiefs had the exact same yards per carry at 4.1. They were 17th in EPA per play. The 2021 Rams that Kevin O'Connell came from, about the same. Like, so a lot of these teams were the same. There were teams like the 2014 Patriots that ran like crazy. The 2018 Patriots. And the Patriots were just good at that. But it was not necessarily a prerequisite. And there's a lot of statistical cases there. I don't know if I personally subscribe to that quite as much anymore. I used to be really like, yeah, who cares about the run game, whatever. But I think I understand that, like, hey, look, no offense is going to walk out there and like pass every single down, right? Like, this ain't college. This ain't a high school team. This is not 7-on-7. You will run. And if you're going to run however many times you want to run, sure, we can argue about that till we're blue in the face, but you got to find a way to be successful. Those can't be plays that you throw away. So I think we can still kind of look at that as a possible point, a possible pressure point for the Vikings. Can they consistently get the run game going? But as we'll talk about in the over-under, 4 of the last 6, they've run it down their throats. The run game's been pretty good. Not fully consistent, got beat by Arizona, got kind of beat up by Tennessee. But I think the run game in the front has been at the very least okay. And that's like the very least. And then Alec Lewis goes into defensive explosive play rate allowed, where the Vikings are a little bit above these Super Bowl teams. Not fully. There are a couple of Patriots teams that allowed more explosive plays, but you look at these Chiefs teams, that famous Bucs 2020 team, the 2017 Eagles, the 2015 Broncos, another infamous defense, all had, 8, 9% explosive plays, and the Vikings allow 11.5% explosive plays. But again, they do that by design because of the turnovers. They have 28 turnovers so far. That's already more than any Super Bowl winning team in the last 10 years. Already. They got 3 games to go. They have generated 28 turnovers. And turnovers are a weird thing. You look at that and you go, oh, well, that'll regress, because people, I think, see turnovers as this like thing that is only a product of luck. And there is luck to turnovers. They're not particularly predictive, but they are earned. Right? They're earned by putting pressure on the quarterback and forcing the quarterback into mistakes. They're earned by just good defensive play, right? Peanut punch, like you did that. That's a skillful thing. And it's very clear that I think if the Vikings did have like one hot little streak of turnovers that was bound to regress, it would have happened by week 16. Like, we're in it now, man. We're here. We made it. So again, they do turn the ball over offensively a lot. They already have 20 offensive turnovers, and there are only two of these teams, the Chiefs from last year and the 2015, ancient Manning Broncos, that had more. And the Vikings still have 3 games to go. And I do think that they'll be able to. I do think they have 5 more turnovers in it before the end of the regular season. But those kind of haven't mattered, because they've been getting the ball right back with 28 defensive turnovers. The next highest is the 2017 Eagles and 2015 Broncos, that each had 25 in their respective seasons. And the Vikings are already past that. It's crazy. So the Vikings have kind of made up for it by having every game be like 3-2 give take. But you can kind of see the point of their formula through that stat, can't you? Where it's like, yeah, we give up explosive plays, but it's kind of because we're going for a lot of turnovers. So we're going to get a lot of turnovers, and we're going to keep giving up those explosive plays, and we're going to keep on that strategy. I think the moment where the Vikings sort of clamp up is also kind of the moment where they lose their magic. You don't want them to do that. This is what we are. I mean, no seatbelts. We die like men. I've been saying it for 2 years with Brian Flores, right? No seatbelts, baby. And let's just get on this roller coaster. Because the Vikings, even though they rank, maybe in the middle or maybe on the lower end of this group of teams, it is undeniable that they belong here. And that's not just some good teams. On these lists, 10 out of 11 have a ring, and the only one that doesn't is the 2024 Vikings. And that's still possible. We'll do this over-under next. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by PrizePicks, the best place to play daily fantasy football. I have been having a ton of fun on PrizePicks. It has been my favorite way to have a little bit of fun on the side while I'm watching, say, a Chargers-Broncos game I don't otherwise care about, where I hit my lineup before halftime this Thursday night, baby. We love to see it. If you want to join me in these kinds of things, you can download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. So if you want to, say, cook up a lineup just for the Vikings-Seahawks game, as long as you have at least one from either team, you're good to go. Or you can do one for all of Sunday's slate or just the primetime games or whatever it is you want. Once again, you can download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. This episode is also brought to you by the College Football Playoffs. It is that time of year. The College Football Playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports' coverage of the College Football Playoff begins December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff Kickoff Show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, and leading into our first matchup, the SMU Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then, the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Moving on here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. When you're done here, if you want to watch a little tape, I just put out a Dalton Reisner video, or I will put it out on Friday morning. It'll probably be out by the time you listen to this. If not, it'll be out shortly. So if you're interested in how Reisner's doing and how that switch is going now a few weeks later, I checked in on that. I also have a Dallas Turner one from earlier in the week if you want to check in on that as well as a big, long article on Wide Left. Now, let's look at the betting lines, do a little grambling with FanDuel here on the Over-Under. The point of the over-under is not necessarily to give you grambling advice. You don't want to take grambling advice from me. But I maybe I'll say something that I think is an interesting idea that I would do or whatever, but you're going to want to get your grambling advice elsewhere. But rather to look at the lines and try to get a sense for where the public is at. By the time we get to this late in the week, these props and lines have been hammered by the public enough to where they've found their equilibrium and become a reflection of what the public thinks more than what the odds makers think. And if you think that the public is too high or too low on something, you can go ahead and catch that at FanDuel, which is where all these lines are coming from. But let's start with the easy ones. Also in a little bit, we'll have my Rabbits pick the game, as we have been doing every week this year. The Vikings are favored by 3 on the road. Over-under is 42.5. So that implies Vikings 23-20 as like the public sort of aggregate score prediction. A 23-20 game. That's pretty medium. And what I'm noticing as I go through this one, as compared to all the other ones we've done all year, it's really hard for everybody to get a handle on this one. It's all very like average and very like just kind of throw it in the middle and see what happens. It's supposed to rain in this game. So, I guess that's the forecast right now, is that it's like likely enough to rain. So everybody's kind of on the lookout for that. There are some other like maybes that we don't really know about. Like, I'm not sure if Kenneth Walker's going to play or how much he's going to play. So it's harder to find stuff on him. And, you know, of course, it's hard to figure out how the weather's going to approach things. So 42.5 is a very medium line, maybe on the lower end of what we'll see, you know, throughout the week everywhere in the NFL. 42.5 might be one of the lower ones, but like not all that much. Pretty in the middle of the bell curve. In terms of touchdown scorers, the only one greater than 50% as an anytime touchdown scorer is Aaron Jones. He's at -110 as I look at it on FanDuel. Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, both at +115, so not too much further down. However, FanDuel doesn't know which one of those is going to be, so they're both at the same one, at the same place, right? And they've actually done this with Aaron Jones and Cam Akers a little bit when when Aaron Jones was hurt and you weren't sure what kind of pitch count he was going to be on. So it's kind of how the betting market tells you, hey, I don't know who the guy is. I don't know what's going to happen here. So there's a lot of uncertainty swirling around this game. In terms of other touchdown scorers of note, Justin Jefferson, who's very often been lower than 50% or shorter than 50%. He's been in minus odds, is at +135 for this game, which is maybe a nod to the secondary and the reputation that the Seattle Seahawks secondary has. And I guess let's sort of use that to segue into the passing props. Sam Darnold's passing prop right now is 244.5. Geno Smith's is 225.5. So Darnold's still above Geno, but even with Geno hurt, and by the way, full participant in practice, he's very clearly going to play. But what level of Geno do you get is going to be the operative question. But at 225.5 for Geno, again, like whenever they put it at an even quarter like that, I always think like, they don't really know, huh? Like that's whenever it's like too even of a number, it's like it feels unmotivated and it kind of feels like they just slapped it somewhere. Like Sam Darnold's not at 249.5. He's at 244.5. So maybe they put it at 250 and it got kind of bumped down a little bit. But Geno, it's all over the place. So I don't know if that line has gone a lot. I don't know if people know what to expect from Geno Smith in this game. He's +142 to get 2 touchdowns. Sam Darnold +112 to get 2 touchdowns. I think this is the first time in a while he's been plus odds to get over 1.5 touchdowns. He's usually comfortably like -148 or something. Usually they really expect him to get it. The betting market is expecting the Vikings passing game to do less than it normally does. Take that for whatever you will. But that's sort of the pattern that we're starting to get to. If you want to look at the receiving props right now, Justin Jefferson's is at 82.5. That's about as low as he gets. The TJ Hawkinson is 45.5. That's kind of funny because he's been in the 30s for a while. But I think the betting market is finally starting to figure out that like he's healthy and that he's got this role. So 45.5 is a much more sensible line for him. Addison at 55.5. His lines are all over the place. Nobody ever knows how to get a handle on Jordan Addison. And that maybe he's a boomer bust player, right? Like he will have a game where he goes 2 for 17 and then he'll have a game where he gets 160 yards. It's like, what do you do with that? You maybe want to go for like, what's his longest reception? That's always an interesting one. It's at 22.5. It's been at like 13 before. Justin Jefferson's is at 25.5, but he's such a boomer bust player. That's just kind of especially like from a fantasy angle, if you're in your fantasy playoffs and you're wondering, start or sit or whatever, you just got to treat him as like, okay, he's either going to get me 30 or 2 and do your math that way. The rushing props, again, interesting. Geno Smith's is at 10.5. I don't know where that lines up for like the past rushing props that he's had or past rushing lines that he's had. But it's below Sam Darnold's to give you a sense, which is at 12.5. So again, that's maybe expecting him to be a little bit hobbled, but I don't like Geno Smith he's an older quarterback, so I'm going to guess he doesn't like run all the time. But Aaron Jones' rushing prop is at 64.5. No Kenneth Walker, no Zach Charbonnet. So again, that's the betting market. That's FanDuel saying we have no idea what's going to happen with these running backs, and you can't even bet on them. It's what happens with an injury. It's very common. So all told, 64.5 for Aaron Jones. That's his default. That's 65 is where he's at, like basically every game, no matter the opponent. So I don't know what the market feels is going to happen with the run game. However, I will say the Seahawks do have a history of giving up running back overs. Not that I would be familiar with that. So I don't know how that marries up with what things have been with what Aaron Jones's line is, but he's always somewhere in the 60s. And if this Seattle Seahawks rush defense has been struggling lately, then putting him right at his default line sort of just tells me they're not really sure if it's going to continue or not. If you want to make a declaration on that, you can go find it at FanDuel. But for me, I always put my whole faith in my pet rabbits, who are clairvoyant and of course understand better than I do what's going to happen in a football game. So let's see what they have to say. They were hiding in their little castle when I first put the lettuce down here, but the ZD was the first one to come out. It just took him a little bit, and he went pretty quickly for the Vikings lettuce. They're usually a little choosier than that, but what then happened is Zoe came screaming out and took from the same pile of lettuce, which is a savvy move by her. She's 9-4 right now. ZD is 7-6. So ZD's kind of hot on her trail, but running out of time. And so now they both have picked the Vikings -3 to win the game, and ZD can't make any progress on Zoe. We're starting to get to the gamesmanship part of this. Next up, your bold predictions. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Hillsdale. Hillsdale is a Christian college in Michigan. That's where their brick and mortar campus is. But I'm talking about the online classes today. They have more than 40 free classes that you can take entirely online. You can start whenever, tune in whenever. You can go deeper if you want with readings and quizzes and discussions, or you can just sit back and listen to a lecture on something you're interested in. And they've got all kinds of topics. A lot of them are like social studies stuff that you maybe would have studied in like that class in high school, but from the perspective that you may expect from a Christian college in Michigan. But there's also other neutral ones. There's like a chemistry class. There's one on, the Great Gatsby or like Shakespearean literature, anything you're interested in. If you want to go check that out, it's all free to sign up at hillsdale.edu/lockedon. That's where you can enroll. There's no cost. It's fully easy to get started. Go to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. Once again, that's hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Oh, baby, is it ever time to get bold? Before I get into this week's bold predictions, I want to go take a look all the way back at the beginning of the season, where you made some. And there are a couple that are still technically possible that are worth reminding you of so we can all watch them. The first one that's still possible came from Sam Al-Gaib, which you did, who said Sam Darnold will win MVP. Now, Sam Darnold's MVP odds have been like relevant, which is just a jarring thing for those of us who watched him, of course, back in his Jets days. He's at plus 12,000 on FanDuel right now, so I'm going to guess probably not happening. But still, good call, man, because this was like August when you said this. Like, we didn't know. Vikes legend said that the Vikings would get all 4 All-Pros, but one of them was Christian Darrisaw, so that's probably out. Eric the Red said that Sam Darnold would beat the Vikings in a game for a different team, like he'd get traded at the deadline or something. Obviously, that's too far gone. Milo Grams is still very much alive. He says that 3 different Vikings will throw a touchdown, but only one will be a quarterback. Very alive. One trick play, and suddenly we're like super live for that. And we've tried a couple times. So it's like they've already called it a couple times. That was probably your chance, but it ain't impossible. Hewart. This one's very live. John Parker Romo gets signed with another team, wins a starting job, then comes back to hump the Vikings by scoring a game-winning field goal. Very, very, very live. There's kicker issues all over the league. Obviously anybody can get hurt, God forbid. And now that Parker Romo had a reasonable stint with the Vikings, he's probably on the top of a lot of lists if a kicker is indeed needed. So we are watching that with great interest. Vikings coverage Skull said that Bynum would lead the league in picks. Byron Murphy is like getting there. You picked the wrong D-back, but Byron Murphy is like right up. He's like one or two interceptions behind. So like one crazy game, right? And then you're having that conversation. Deck with 2 C's says that JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold would tie for passing yards. Said that before JJ McCarthy's injury. That's like where we're at, by the way, on these. So that Sam Darnold MVP call was insane. Casey the Coolest said that the Vikings would win every revenge game and defined those revenge games. Folks, we went, what is that? 7 games? 6 games? We went 5-1 in these 6. There's one Packers game left, but he picked the Falcons, Texans, Cardinals, Packers, Rams, and Jaguars. If it weren't for the Rams game, this would be live depending on the Packers game going on. So good call. I mean, obviously, winning any specific cross-section of games is going to be easy when you go 12-2, but nobody saw that coming. Vikes Notes said that Kene Nwangwu would break the single-season kick return record. He didn't even make the team. And Skull Ross said that the Vikings would win all their games that fall on odd number dates and lose all their games on even number dates. And obviously that didn't go down. They won too many games. Okay, let's quick look back at last week's bold predictions. Pete Bursich, who was on the show last week, said that Hockenson would have a career day and get 14 catches was how he defined it. I gave him any number of metrics, but of course we didn't get there. Hockenson, very good day, not a career day. Dr. Bops said that the Vikings would win by more than 28 points, setting a new record for margin of victory against the Bears. They won by a paltry 18, just 3 scores. Alexander Anger says that the Vikings would see the Bears would see it's a winter whiteout and hibernate, and they will score 0 points. We were on track for that all the way to halftime, but they ended up getting a little bit in the second half. Especially, they got a touchdown against the Twos too. That made it pretty tough. Josh Wells said that with the national spotlight on them again, the Bears would fire yet another head coach after a complete pantsing by the Vikings. That does remind me, someone predicted that the Vikings would get Kirk Cousins benched. And they were 1 game early on that. So good for you. So maybe we'll have the same thing here. Thomas Brown not quite fired, but maybe the Bears will fire another guy. Why not? What do you got to lose? Christian Torsmere said that Justin Jefferson would put up 255 receiving yards to honor the numerical code for white. I love that. Based and Pickman Pilled said that Caleb Williams would throw 5 picks. We didn't get any, just a little bit too high on all of that. Caleb, no picks, right? No picks. He actually takes care of the ball reasonably. That's not really the issue. I mean, some of the dangerous stuff like happened. There were dropped picks, but I think it's more about sacks for him and then the fumbles that come from that. That's like the real disastrous stuff. Bobby Dutch, good old Bobby, said that only white players would score touchdowns in the whiteout game. That would make me laugh so hard. But it did not happen, of course. First touchdown was Justin Jefferson, so right away we didn't get there. And then I said that Bullard and DePaola would both eventually possess the ball at the end of a play, like on a fumble or something like that. Didn't get there. Okay, let's move on to the next set of predictions. A very delicious looking duck, holiday duck, tasty roastable duck, says that the letters C and J come right before the letters D and K, respectively. Knowing this, CJ Ham will get exactly 1 more reception and exactly 1 more touchdown than DK Metcalf. Boy, I'm really tempted to just give you more generally. Just CJ Ham, more receiving, more touchdowns. You have to get both, though. So if DK Metcalf gets 1 catch for 10 yards and a touchdown, and CJ Ham gets 1 catch for 20 yards but no touchdown, we don't win this. But I'll give you both, and I'll give you more than I won't hold you to exactly. Even though that kind of undermines the impetus for this one, it's fine. I'm gonna still make it a little bit less annoyingly specific. Let's get a big CJ Ham receiving game. Why not, right? We'll just get him in like a rollout or something, or just like hit him on an alert like against the Ravens that one time. Scoliosis says the forecast is for rain and about 50-degree temps. In that spirit, it will be raining explosive plays, with each team recording 2 plays that travel in yards the exact temperature at kickoff. So we're talking explosives, right? The Vikings are such an explosive play offense, and the Seahawks are an explosive play team too, with like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and they get explosive runs sometimes too. So like I can see this one hitting for sure, explosiveness wise. I will say if the temp falls below 40, I'm no longer honoring this because that's too easy for explosive plays. We need like a whole bunch of breakaway plays for it to be truly raining explosives. I'm not going to do the 20-yard thing that's like the actual statistic explosive because the Vikings get that 1 out of 6 times. That wouldn't be very bold. We need like real big, long runaway plays, and that's got to be. We'll figure out the temperature at kickoff. Scoliosis, I'm going to rely on you to record this. Please at me with this, with what it is. But we'll kind of work on it from there. Fraud Detector says that in honor of the Jets set me up to fail bowl. I completely forgot about that angle. It's Geno Smith and Sam Darnold. It's 2 first-round picks, right? Geno was first. He was like a late first for the Seahawks or for the Jets. 2 first-round picks. Geno Smith and Sam Darnold, former franchise quarterbacks the Jets couldn't work with that are both playing well. Both QBs will throw at least 375 yards each. So $37.5 million is Rodgers' contract average annual value, and 3 touchdown passes each. 1 in honor of Sam, 1 for Geno, and 1 for Zach Wilson, who is got to be doing this next, right? Zach Wilson, he's backing up in Denver right now, I think is where he's at. He's going to show up some like go Raiders or something and go crazy with some scheme lord. Purple Nurple says rain game, so let's get freaky. There will be 2 fumble into the end zone touchbacks total in the game. You know, if that one hits, having to see that for me will be punishment enough. I hate that rule, and having to see it twice in a game, I might just turn inside out. I don't know what'll happen in my body. Isaiah Hager says that in honor of the 12s, Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison will both catch 12 passes. That's a heck of a parlay. That's the kind of passing you want to see in the rain, right? And it's so funny after the Monday Night Crew made such a big deal about Sam Darnold's pro day being in the rain. We got Rain Sam. He's good in the rain, I guess. Which it sounds like something like a package that like ESPN had ready for a rookie year Sam Darnold game that they never got to use. That was like just sitting in the archives collecting dust for 6 years that they then got to finally pull out and use. But I guess that's the narrative now. Kyle Barker says this is Kyle. Hands down, top 3 bold prediction this year. I love this one dearly. You have gone to such an obscure place. The battle of the sitcoms. DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba combined for at least as many yards as the number of Frasier episodes, which is 264. Took place in Seattle. Justin Jefferson gets as many yards as the number of Mary Tyler Moore episodes, 168. Incredible work, Kyle Barker. Absolutely fantastic. I hope yours hits. I'm going to be rooting for it. I am going to get in on this as well. I'm still trying to get out of my eggs punishment. If I hit it, if I hit a bold prediction, it will neutralize the bold prediction that hit week 1 that is causing me to do a punishment where I have to eat my age in eggs. And that is, I'm going to do the same thing I did last week. There are 2 former Seahawks on the Vikings right now, Shaq Griffin and Jonathan Bullard. And both of them will get turnovers. They will both get the ball. They're both going to get their hands on the ball. Let's hope for some strip sacks and some Shaq Griffin interceptions. Let's all have a good time. So here's the deal. I'll talk to you about it more next week, but it's the holidays, obviously. I hope you all are great. I can't guarantee that I'm going to get 5 shows out. I'm going to be on the road. I'm going to be doing, kind of guerrilla, trying to get these done as much as possible. And especially when it's Christmas and Christmas Eve, I'm not going to abandon my family on Christmas to do a podcast necessarily. If I can find a time where it's convenient to do it, I'll do it. I'm going to try to get 5 out, but I can't guarantee it. I'm going to do my best, but I love you. And if I don't see you, have a happy holiday. And we'll do our best. I'll have a recap show on after the Sunday game, of course, and I'll still be on the postcast. And I'm doing one of the football parties this week, but not the other. So we'll put it together. But it's the holidays, you understand. I'll see you for whatever I see you for. Have a great holiday, and as always, Skull.